Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. The year's big annual Asian Economic Summit, APEC, ends without a formal leader's statement for the first time after the US and China clash yet again on trade. Scores of South and North Koreans attend a special event in the north marking the 20th anniversary of the long-suspended joint tourism program at one of North Korea's most scenic mountains. Plus, trying to narrow the divide over next year's budget, the floor leaders of South Korea's three biggest parties are trying to reach a compromise as the deadline looms. Let's start, though, in Papua New Guinea, the host for this year's APEC summit. The annual gathering of leaders from the Asia-Pacific region came to a close on Sunday without an agreement for the first time since the forum was established a quarter of a century ago. The main sticking point continues to be the intensifying trade war between the world's two economic superpowers, the United States and China. Jae-in starts us off.
For the first time since the APEC summit's inception 25 years ago, leaders failed to agree on Sunday to a formal joint statement. According to CNN, all 21 APEC members in attendance were in agreement, except one, China. A diplomat involved in the negotiation process said tensions rose between the U.S. and China, with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi objecting to certain wording in the draft document of the joint agreement. Sources say phrases like unfair trade practices may have caused Beijing's negative reaction, as it would appear the blame for the tensions lies at China's feet. During a speech at the APEC forum, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said there would be no end to the U.S. tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese goods until China changes its ways. Pence said China's trade practices and intellectual property theft goes beyond trade and into concerns about human rights. He also took aim at Chinese President Xi Jinping's signature One Belt, One Road initiative, saying countries should not take Chinese development loans because they lead to staggering debt. He urged instead that countries work with the U.S., stressing that Washington does not coerce, corrupt, or compromise their independence. With the APEC summit ending without agreement, Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister Peter O'Neill, in his closing comments, said the group will try to ensure free and open trade by 2020. He later added the host nation will release a formal closing statement in the coming days. Jae, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in is back in Seoul this morning following his two-nation Asian tour that took him to Singapore and Papua New Guinea for a series of multilateral forums. For a look back at who he met and what was achieved during his nearly one-week-long trip, we turn to this report by Shin Se-min.
At the APEC summit in Papua New Guinea, President Moon Jae-in proposed a joint project called the Digital Innovation Fund aimed at fostering the Pacific Rim's digital capabilities. He put forward his administration's economic and social policies as an exemplary case for APEC's common goal of inclusive growth. The South Korean leader also reaffirmed his resolve to play a part in advancing sustainable growth in the region. President Moon pressed ASEAN and Pacific Rim nations deemed relatively aloof when it comes to efforts to denuclearize North Korea to give him guarantees that they'll play their role in ensuring the regime makes progress on its commitment to abandon its nuclear weapons. On the sidelines of the summits in Singapore and Papua New Guinea, President Moon held bilateral meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, and Chinese President Xi Jinping. North Korea was a key topic, especially as talks between Pyongyang and Washington seemed to have hit a deadlock. President Moon and Putin agreed on the need for reciprocal measures from the U.S. and others if the Kim Jong-un regime makes progress on denuclearization. President Moon and Pence reaffirmed that the talks between Pyongyang and Washington are progressing well, and Pence requested the South Korean leader to engage in closer communications with the Kim Jong-un regime. At the summit between Presidents Moon and Xi, the leaders both saw the second North Korea-U.S. summit and a planned reciprocal visit to Seoul by Kim Jong-un as crucial in resolving the denuclearization issue. The only other leader from the region that President Moon did not meet with was Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. This may have been due to the recent downturn in relations since Tokyo's angry response to South Korea's Supreme Court ruling in favor of the Korean victims of Japan's wartime systems of forcing Koreans to work in Japanese factories. Still, with the majority of the key players sharing the common desire to keep the peace drive going, it seems negotiations for a second North Korea-US will finally get some traction. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, 20 years ago, it became possible for South Korean civilians to visit the North's Mount Kumgang. Some 100 South Koreans, including the chairperson of Hyundai Group, headed north on Sunday to celebrate with officials there. There have been no tours for 10 years, but the program has become a symbol of inter-Korean cooperation. Hong Yu reports.
The Mount Geumgangsan tour started way back in 1998 with a gesture by the founder of Hyundai, Chung Ju-young. He offered the North hundreds of cattle in an act of goodwill, and when he delivered them, he proposed starting a tour program as a way of initiating trade. Thanks to his effort, 900 South Korean tourists got to take a cruise ship to North Korea's east coast and then go on to Mount Geumgangsan that November. Those tours continued for 5 years by ship, and then in 2003 they started going over land. The Mount Geumgangsan tour was what preserved trust between the two Koreas when armed battles occurred on the western sea border between their navies. But when a South Korean tourist was shot dead in 2008, the tour stopped. Since then, Hyundai Group has tried to resume them, but sanctions on North Korea stood in their way. Still, on Sunday, 10 years since the tour stopped, the two Koreas celebrated the 20th anniversary together. The celebration was suggested by Hyundai, and North Korea agreed to it. The chair of Hyundai Group, Hyun Jung-eun, is attending together with South Korean lawmakers and former ministers of unification, while the North is sending around 80 officials from its Asia-Pacific Committee. South Korea's Minister of Unification says the two sides won't be talking about resuming the tours this time. But many people think that would be a big step forward in terms of economic cooperation. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's political party leaders are due to meet today to discuss ways to get budget negotiations back on track. The meeting among the floor leaders of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, the Liberty Korea Party and the Bareunmirae Party comes as the National Assembly has failed to make progress on its review of the government's 2019 budget due to their deep divisions on the budget size and how the money should be spent. They are still at odds over how to form a parliamentary sub-panel to discuss the size of the budget, with only 2 weeks left until the legal deadline for handling the government's roughly $415 billion proposal. South Korea's top nuclear envoy will leave for the US in the coming hours as Seoul aims to restart stalled denuclearization talks with North Korea. Do-hoon, who is Seoul's special representative for Korean Peninsula peace and security affairs, will be in Washington for 3 days for meetings with his US counterpart Stephen Biegun. The two are expected to assess the security conditions on the Korean Peninsula and discuss ways to strengthen cooperation on the denuclearization process. They are also expected to talk about establishing a working group for regular communication on denuclearization sanctions and inter-Korean exchanges. US President Donald Trump has highly praised the work done by his administration in dealing with North Korea. During an interview with Fox News that aired on Sunday, he said he was advised by his predecessor, Barack Obama, that the North was one of the top challenges for Washington. Yet President Trump explained he has made, quote, real decisions on North Korea, and he's very happy with the progress made so far. Now, staying with President Trump, he says he does not want to listen to an audio recording of the murder of a Saudi journalist, despite facing mounting pressure to punish Saudi Arabia for the killing. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Aram. So Aram, fill us in.
Well, President Trump told Fox News Sunday that he was fully briefed on Jamal Khashoggi's murder. He said he did not want to listen to that tape because he already knew the gruesome details in it.
Because it's a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I've been fully briefed on it. There's no reason for me to hear it. In fact, I said to the people, should I? They said, you really shouldn't. There's no reason. I know everything that went on in the tape without having to.
And what happened?
The CIA has concluded that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had ordered the killing of Khashoggi. He was an outspoken critic of the Saudi leadership. Trump added he did not want to point the finger at Prince Salman, but noted that people close to the de facto leader may have been involved. Trump faces intense pressure from senior Democratic and Republican lawmakers to take tougher action against Riyadh. Some have urged Trump to drop his support for the Saudis, and others have suggested the U.S. suspend arms sales to the kingdom. Trump has so far resisted that pressure and said he wants to maintain a close relationship with Riyadh despite Khashoggi's murder.
But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
So if Congress...
Washington has imposed economic sanctions on 17 Saudi officials for their alleged role in the killing, but they do not target the Saudi government. Now, also in that interview, President Trump says he may be gearing up for a cabinet reshuffle. He also gave the first 2 years of his presidency an A+, stressing his administration has done a great job reviving America's economy. Our Kim Yuna reports.
President Trump has hinted at the possibility of changing as many as 5 cabinet positions. This is what he said during an interview with Fox News, which was aired on Sunday. Speaking to Fox News Sunday's Chris Wallace, Trump said he has 3 or 4 or 5 positions in mind, but explained it may only be 2 in the end. His remarks come as sources say Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen and Chief of Staff John Kelly may be replaced. Speaking about Nielsen, President Trump criticized how she handles the southern border with Mexico, stressing she needs to be much tougher. Trump also said he gets along with Kelly, but it's no longer a guarantee he will remain in his position. President Trump has repeatedly expressed his intention to make changes following the midterm elections, but he is yet to provide details. President Trump also gave his tenure as Commander-in-Chief an A+ rating, explaining that the U.S. economy is in the best shape ever. On the special counsel probe into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, Trump remained firm that there was no collusion and that he'll not sit down for an interview with Robert Mueller's team. President Trump said a written response will be turned over soon, which he said gives very detailed answers and explanations. Kim Yuna, Arirang News.
In other news, the death toll from a devastating wildfire in California has risen now to at least 76. Nearly 1,300 people are also still unaccounted for, with officials fearing the death toll could keep rising. Over the past week and a half, the so-called Camp Fire has destroyed almost 10,000 homes and has torched an area spanning about 150,000 acres. Firefighters are desperately trying to fight the blaze, which they say may take until the end of this month to fully contain. Rain is forecast later this week in the affected area, which would help tamp down the fire, but it could also hinder search and rescue efforts as it drenches the terrain. A missing Argentine submarine has been found after a year. It disappeared in the South Atlantic with 44 crew members on board. Argentina's Navy announced the discovery over the weekend, saying the ARA San Juan was detected about 900 meters deep in waters off the Valdez Peninsula in Argentine Patagonia. The discovery was announced just 2 days after families of the missing sailors marked the 1-year anniversary of the missing submarine. Argentina's Defense Minister, Oscar Aguad, has said his country does not have the capability of recovering the sunken vessel. The next steps are being discussed. The reasons as to why the submarine vanished remains a mystery, but questions have been raised over the Argentine Navy's maintenance of its submarine fleet.
Now, a Korean-American candidate running for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives has lost her race. The AP declared the race on Saturday local time for California's 39th district for Democrat Gil Cisneros, who beat Republican Young Kim. Kim appeared to be in the lead on election night, but as postal ballots came in, that lead disappeared. The latest count, according to CNN, put Kim behind by 1.6%. Young Kim would have been one of 2 Korean Americans elected to Congress this cycle, along with Andy Kim from New Jersey, a Democrat, and she would have been the first Korean American woman. Andy Kim won his race and is the first Korean American to go to Congress in 20 years. Teenage figure skater Lim Eun-soo has won her first senior Grand Prix medal, becoming the first South Korean to do so since Kim Yuna. The 15-year-old won bronze at the Rostelecom Cup in Moscow over the weekend, finishing with a combined 185.67 points from her short program and free skating. Kim Yuna was the last South Korean figure skater to finish on the podium of a major event. She did it in 2009 and went on to become Olympic champion the following year. Now, smart farm technology was designed to help farmers, but these smartphone-based systems are difficult to understand for older people. Now, Korean researchers have developed a new system that's operated through voice commands. Park Se-young with more.
This chrysanthemum farmer checks his phone first thing in the morning. He can check the condition of his flowers from home and adjust the temperature and humidity of his greenhouse before he goes to work, all by using voice commands.
3번 커튼 열어줘.
3번 커튼을 열고 있습니다.
Being able to open and close the greenhouse immediately through voice commands has resulted in higher quality flowers.
Many farms are interested in smart farming, but older farmers have been hesitant because some systems are difficult to operate. Another recently developed smart farm technology utilizes movable solar panels. The system produces electricity using solar panels and manages crops through remote devices.
Smart farming is not simply a combination of ICT and agriculture. It's evolving into a technology that any farmer can easily use.
Smart farm technology does not just reduce the workload of farmers, it can also help them improve efficiency. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, upcycling is becoming a big thing within the South Korean art scene in recent years. It's a new way of creating artwork and going green at the same time as artists produce their works using junk and scraps. Jo Sung-min reports.
Upcycling is becoming one of the most popular techniques for local artists. It's when you create a work of art by reusing all kinds of thrown-out materials. A perfect example would be the works of artist Lee Dae-seung. Whether it is a broken clock, a cutting board, or plastic trays, he's used materials that could be easily found in a junkyard and turned them into canvases depicting flowers and the natural scenery of traditional Korean folk painting. Recently displayed at a gallery in Seoul, his works symbolize harmony between nature and the industrial goods we use on a daily basis.
The materials I used are just as they were when first found. I wanted to show my work on canvases with no frames, so I chose the cutting board and the trays.
Another example is this lighting ornament made out of parts from a broken bicycle. The artist polished the parts and put them together in her own way. Her other works include a bracelet made out of bike chains and a pencil case made from a rubber tire.
Bicycles get discarded every day, so there's no shortage of supply. I like how bikes are structured, and I also like to tear them down piece by piece and then put them into different shapes.
Industry experts say upcycling could become more than just an art trend in Korea because it conveys the message that anyone can be an artist, and it's also a good way of preserving the environment. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
Now, if you're watching us in Korea, there's a good chance you've wondered what the country, now one of the world's leading economies and tech hubs, looked like 20, 40, even 60 or 70 years ago, considering South Korea has come such a long way in such a short period of time. Suffice to say, it was very different back then. A photo exhibition is now on that actually provides visitors with a first-hand view of South Korea's past, warts and all. So Eun-kyung reports.
This photo was taken during the June democracy movement in 1987. More than 30 years ago, South Koreans held huge protests demanding direct presidential elections and greater civil liberties. The photo shows the university students who died after being hit by a tear gas bomb fired by the authorities. The incident sparked a wave of anti-government sentiment in the country. One photo publisher in Korea is holding its 30th photo exhibition. The art fair introduced the various aspects of South Korea from the 1940s to the present day, including societal, cultural, and political features, to show the nation's history to the current and future generations in the form of photography.
South Korea achieved remarkable economic growth in a short period of time, but during the process, we lost traditions and historical lessons we should not forget. So my team has been publishing photos to encourage future generations to remember what the country was like.
Over the last 3 decades, this publisher has printed nearly 700 photo books, shedding light on every aspect of Korea's positive and negative sides. These pictures will reflect the lives of ordinary people over the years. In the 70s, this bus had an assistant collecting fares and jamming passengers inside. A mail delivery man brings a letter to curious children in one of Korea's remote rural areas. Some of the pictures were taken by American officials dispatched to the South several decades ago. The color pictures were taken by unknown U.S. officials and servicemen mostly in Seoul since around the time of New Year's Day in 1948. It shows Seoul before it was destroyed during the Korean War and children playfully enjoying the New Year.
Korea's history and identity can be presented in written form, but I think photography is a wonderful way to show the country's unique culture and identity in a visual way.
He added that instead of just focusing on Korea's strength, Koreans need to embrace all of nation's history, including aspects they would later forget. He says it can help future generations avoid the mistakes of the past and be thankful for what they have today. 서은경, Arirang News.
Good morning. Temperatures will turn colder this week. Tomorrow we'll see lows drop to freezing. And notice how cold it's going to be on Friday morning at a low of -1 degree Celsius here in the capital. So have your winter jackets ready. And it's forecast to be a dusty start to the week. Stagnant airflow and toxic smog from China will affect fine dust levels. A face mask is a must if you plan to be outdoors on this Monday. Meanwhile, Chinese cities continue to draw attention for their smog-filled skies, but Japan will have decent air quality. Daily highs will range between 12 and 17 degrees Celsius, Busan topping out at 17, Seoul and Chuncheon only getting up to 12 degrees this afternoon. Brilliant sunshine will shine down on us, but have your face mask ready again and check the dust levels before heading out. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it for now on this Monday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to us here on Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up, including our next newscast at noon Korea time with our Lee Eun-soo. So until then, goodbye.